Good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, which means we have an episode of Gojo and Golic coming your way. Monday through Friday, that's what we do here. All right, Diana Rossini going to join the program to break down the Robert SALEH firing. It's what everybody's talking about. Obviously, we're going to talk about it too. Plus, Larry Fitzgerald going to join the program, and Jason Fitz, our buddy, he's going to give us the latest on what's going on in Vegas with the Raiders. All that and more coming up on Gojo and Golic.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield. We are presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. And we got a great show coming up for you today. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review it. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings network. And as Jesse mentioned, we got a couple of Fitzes coming up today. One is going to be a Hall of Famer in the NFL, and the other was a chubby fiddle player at one point in his life. I don't know if maybe Larry Fitzgerald also has that in common. We didn't ask him about that, and so we'll find out all together. But in the meantime, before we get to that, Jesse mentioned Diana's coming on here because if anyone watched, we have some people that probably inhabit both universes. The Dan Le Batard show yesterday, what you saw as our show was ending and their show was beginning was the Athletics NFL insider Diana Rossini on air with the Dan Le Batard show guys, immediately aghast and appalled when they dropped the bomb that the New York Jets had fired their head coach Robert SALEH, and Diana, being in the news breaking game, being on air with those guys who were probably asking her God knows what, and seeing that she had been scooped and seeing that this was breaking and wanting to call all of her sources and text all the people that she knew over there, immediately walks off of the set where she was talking with them. So we'll find out what Diana did in the interim, which, Dad, I'd imagine was what a lot of people did. Called their friends in New York to find out what the hell was going on, because it seems like now, with the benefit of 24 hours for us, Dad, that this was a one-person decision. Jets owner Woody Johnson acted alone in firing Robert SALEH, and now the Jets are going to have to deal with the aftermath here. How stunned were you, Dad, when we all talked about this?
I thought Robert SALEH, if the team didn't make the playoffs or didn't make the Super Bowl, maybe if they made a strong run in the playoffs, he'd keep his job. But we didn't. I didn't see that happening with this team. So I thought that he would be gone either later in the season, and a lot of times you'll see a firing later in the season for the reason that now teams can actually talk to other coaches. If you still have a coach, you can't. Now, we see management and ownership backdoor to talk to coaches to see if they're interested, but you can legally talk to another coach if you fire your coach. So you'll see sometimes a coach fired before the season ends so that team can get a jump on the next coach. This wasn't that situation at all, being fired 5 games into the season. And most coach firings are ownership decisions. Now you'll heed the words of your GM and other people in management, but it comes down to the owner. The owner's the one signing the check. The owner's for the most important, job on the team being the head coach, and the owner's going to be the one that's going to fire him. So it's not surprising. What surprised me the most is, for as bad as the Jets have been over the years, that this is the first in-season firing of a head coach by Woody Johnson in the 25 years that he has owned the team. That surprised me more than Robert Saleh getting fired. I think it was just a matter of time, because while the team isn't performing well, especially on the offensive side, there just doesn't seem to be the connection. We always talk about you need obviously the head coach's voice, but you need the voice of your top players. And so you need the top players to buy into your head coach. And it just seemed like Aaron Rodgers, who's his own dude anyway, he and Robert Saleh just weren't hitting it off. In all honesty, I have no idea. I don't expect this to change their results a whole lot, but this is an owner who is under the gun of saying this, as he keeps saying, this is the best team that he's had, and he wants results now. Well, I don't think changing your head coach is going to change the results.
Yeah, I there's a lot that goes into this, because Robert Saleh is a guy that, according to Diana Russini and others reporting on this, was someone that the Jets had considered maybe moving on from this last offseason, but felt like the injury to Aaron Rodgers, reported affinity for Robert Saleh were all reasons to bring him back and give him another opportunity, despite a guy who ultimately leaves New York with a record that's, less than stellar through 3 seasons. He was 20-36, including the start of this year, and the offense never got off the ground. And so there were all those reasons to bring him back. But, Dad, like you said, this wasn't wholly unsurprising. What's surprising is the order of operations, because usually, you mentioned, the process is also there's some other people that get fired along the way before that, usually a coordinator. And on this Jets team, it's pretty easy to find patient zero for most frustrations in there. As we saw after the last game over in London, frustrations in the locker room from leaders like Quincy Williams, who are saying people need to be held accountable for the same mistakes. We keep hearing the same things, which I'm sure is a sentiment you all know. Frustrated defense looking over the offense like, what the hell, man? Yep. As Nathaniel Hackett, who was bad last year, didn't get fired because he's Aaron's boy, and was reportedly someone, according to Jonathan Jones over at CBS Sports, that head coach Robert Saleh was mulling firing before he was fired himself, to his surprise Tuesday morning, seemed like, I'm sure, the person most people thought would be the one to go if you were going to make a change, because the offense for the last few years has been the abject disaster, while the defense has been one of the league's best. And so, Dad, I think that's the stunner for a lot of people is, despite that, and listen, we don't know. Robert Saleh is not just the head coach of the defense, right? Like, we give him credit because we talk all the time. If you're a head coach with a background on a certain side of the ball, your side has to ball. We know Jeff Ulbrich, who's now the acting interim head coach, was actually calling the plays for the last 3 years, but Rob Saleh still checks that box. But he's not just the head coach of the defense. He's also got to wear the failings of the offense and the things that go on there. But it kind of feels like he's a little bit handcuffed to a guy in Nathaniel Hackett, who's there for one reason and one reason alone, and it's the guy playing quarterback.
You talk about a coaching change this early. You're talking about it's tough to talk about the inabilities of the offense when you fire your head coach, who is a defensive head coach, and the offense is fully in the hands of Nathaniel Hackett. So does it go deeper into players, into locker room? Did he lose the locker room and such? Well, Jeff Ulbrich, who was unbelievable, he was a former linebacker in the NFL, incredibly respected by the players, but nothing's going to change. The offense is still going to be bad, and the defense is still going to be good. I hear analysts yesterday talking about The Jets need to change their offense. They need to become the Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan movement offense. That's not going to happen. That's not Nathaniel Hackett, and that's not Aaron Rodgers. They brought those two together to run the offense that they ran in Green Bay, which is basically no motion, take the play clock down to the end, try and get a free play, or just not have the motion that the offenses of today have. You're not going to change the offense. Nothing is going to change on the offensive side of the ball.
Well, and that's the issue. I mean, you fired Mike LaFleur. He's the one you got out of the paint so you could do this. You had one of the guys in the Brotherhood,
yes,
and you fired him as the scapegoat for the problems last season or before this that were probably bigger than that. Who Joe Douglas, by the way, continues to get to skate through all this and somehow survives this. But, Dad, for this, the thing that changes is actually interesting, and I heard Dominique Foxworth bring this up on his podcast, is you actually now make the defense worse by doing this, because Jeff Ulbrich, who is the defensive coordinator calling the plays, now has to assume all the head coaching duties. He's got to go and manage everything else, and he's already said, hey, he was a guy that got to coach down at the Senior Bowl this last year, has eyes on maybe being a head coach one day, and said it's amazing all the things you don't realize are under the purview of the head coach that you've now got to work with here. And so now you weaken the defense. It's like I talk about with offensive line all the time. When one guy gets hurt, if you move multiple guys around up front, you've now made two positions worse at their job instead of just putting a backup in at one. If you kick a guy that was the guard into center, put a backup guard in, you've now made two people worse at their jobs. That's kind of the situation that Dominique underscored here with Jeff Ulbrich, where now you take the side of the ball that was good and the guy that's calling plays for them and say, hey, we're going to put more on your plate and allow the offense to keep doing what they're doing here. Now, Dominique made the case they should have promoted Nathaniel Hackett to head coach, who, listen, was a head coach in Denver with the Broncos, albeit one that failed and was shown the door there pretty quickly. But at the very least, it would have gotten him away from the offense in a way that seems to be the solution most people want.
The only issue I get what you're saying, but the only, and let's say Nathaniel Hackett is demoted. I mean, so who do they put in as O coordinator?
Which is still on the table, by the way. Apparently,
yes.
Jeff Ulbrich was kind of mum on the future of Nathaniel Hackett and his play calling and said basically everything's on the table. I'm paraphrasing here.
So if you sit there and look at the coaching staff and say who could take over as the OC, it'd probably be Todd Downing, who was the pass game coordinator. He was an offensive coordinator for the Raiders. He was an offensive coordinator for Tennessee, that maybe he would take over. But I guess my point is you have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback. The offense isn't let's just say it's Todd Downing for sake of saying it's Todd Downing. It's not like he's going to revamp the offense, change this offense into something Aaron Rodgers hasn't run mid-season. The offense is going to be what it is with the talent they have on that offense is going to be what it is. So I don't, outside of maybe players' attitude, if they didn't like what was going on in the locker room, but I don't even know if that's going to change if the offense still doesn't produce and the defense is producing. You can get some rolling eyes going on in the locker room and on the field. I as long as Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback, that offense is not going to change systems.
I feel so dumb for believing that any amount of quarterback cachet or production was ever going to make the Jets any less the Jets. Like, this is an organization and the decision-making process from someone in Woody Johnson who's coming out and saying, this is one of the best rosters I've ever seen. They should be doing this. I view this team as a team with a Super Bowl caliber roster. You need your eyes checked then. Like, there are major flaws that have been covered up for a while here by a great defense that haven't been fixed now. And just seeing the way that this has all gone about, where you had the reports yesterday that I get people said were exaggerated, that Robert Saleh was escorted out by security. But, God, the fact that he wasn't allowed to talk to or address the team while this went on after the fact either, the way that this went down, Dad, just reeks of an organization that is continually shooting itself in the foot, and one that every time things go wrong, and it's what you always hear from fans, local fans around an organization, is look up the problems that go through organizations that lose as often as the Jets lose, always go to the top. And so you've got Woody Johnson there making decisions like this that are ultimately going to be the reason why none of this, whatever happens on the field, all the ingredients you buy, are never going to be good enough.
And much like when Detroit was bad, much like when Cleveland is bad, but they were better last year, were bad for years. It's not just one coach and one GM. It's a changing over. I mean, the Jets have the longest playoff drought in the NFL, 13 years. That's well before Robert Saleh. This has been a poorly run organization. We'll talk about Saleh being 20-36, not having a quarterback. He had Zach Wilson, Mike White, Joe Flacco, Trevor Siemian, Tim Boyle. I mean, that is certainly not a who's who of quarterbacks that you're going through. And that's just under the Robert Saleh era, let alone the eras before that who have, as the playoff drought continues. So this is an ongoing problem through multiple head coaches. Robert Saleh is just the latest. And again, I don't know what changing him right now is. Woody Johnson can sit there and say, this is the best lineup we've had, all he wants until he's blue in the face. But the product is on the field is not, and that's not going to change.
Yeah, when you fail to address the actual problem, which is what's going on offense by doing this, you might we see the coaching firing bump, because regardless of this data, and it sounds like everyone in the building's shocked. We can talk with Diana more about that, but it sounds like everyone was pretty shocked by this news in the building, players, coaches, everyone else. And so that does have the effect of like putting you on notice. When someone gets fired in a building, everyone realizes, okay, if you weren't already hyper aware in this league, everyone is expendable and it can go at any time. And that does put you on edge enough to where maybe that adrenaline carries you through. We've seen for a game for certain people. But then after that, things are going to level out. And to your point, you're going to be what you've been by and large. It's hard to ride that wave too long in this league when at the end of the day, there are still certain things on the field that ail you in the way that you do specifically offense on this squad.
Yeah, and oh, by the way, there is one player that's not expendable, and that's Aaron Rodgers. He is the only non-expendable player, and you would say, I guess, some of the defensive players, because the defense is playing well, but Aaron Rodgers' numbers are some of the worst he's had since the beginning of his career, 5 games into a season, and that's just not on it. Listen. They all take responsibility, from the O-line to the wide receivers to the running back to Aaron Rodgers himself. You can't make excuses for anybody on that offensive side of the ball.
And I guess that's the thing that surprises me, though, Dad, is this was also, at least in my mind, built into the model that there was going to be a period where this might be tough in the beginning. For all the reasons that we know in the NFL, beginnings of the season can be slow, especially for offense in this day and age where we've said structurally in the NFL, offensive linemen have a tougher time at the start of the season because you don't get as many reps in camp as you used to for a position that needs a bleep ton of reps. A team coming together and trying to microwave the continuity between quarterback and all these skill weapons that they didn't get last year because he was hurt. You would assume there's a certain amount of wiggle room built in for, again, a team that if they win this weekend will be first in the AFC East, has a chance to very really win their division this year. And so I always set aside the idea that, hey, maybe there's stuff going on inside the building we just don't know. And Robert Saleh had truly lost the locker room, and he's some sort of cancer that you needed to pluck out of the building. Like, there's always a possibility of that, but it's not what we've seen from the outside, so I can only comment but so much. And so the rest of it is, hey, is this just like a total lack of patience? Why didn't you do this last year if you were this close to firing him and come into the season with a little bit more clear plan in such an important season? In your mind, if you're Woody Johnson and you got this roster that you believe in so much, why wasn't it important enough for you to absolutely set this plan in a way you were comfortable with for multiple weeks here? That's the part, Dad, that doesn't jive, because there's a bunch of very real football reasons why this was always going to take a little while for them on offense, especially when you wanted to ignore the biggest problem in most people's minds, which is the play caller.
And I think it's fool's gold to think, they could win the division and make a run. Now, they could win the division because New England stinks and Miami lost their quarterback, and they're a bad team without their quarterback. So it's basically 2 teams. I still think Buffalo will win the division, but even if the Jets were, it's not. They're not. I would highly doubt they make a run in the AFC against the other top teams in the AFC. And let me put an ancillary thing, comment on an ancillary thing. Devontae Adams, I heard analysts saying, oh, Devontae Adams should going to the Jets. That would help. Devontae Adams should run from the thought of going to the Jets. I mean, run. And I know he doesn't have a say. I guess he could by saying I won't report if it's this team or that team. But, I mean, Devontae Adams going to the Jets when Aaron Rodgers may not be the quarterback after this year and the offense is bad, why would he want to go to the Jets? There is no rhyme or reason for him to want to go to New York.
Again, in all of this, I kept coming back to, like, Stugotz was right. I feel dumb for believing that any amount of Aaron Rodgers was going to make the Jets not the Jets. And instead, what we got was the most Jetsian way for all of this to go down humanly possible yesterday. So much so, hey, we'll talk about Drake May getting pumped into the starting job for the New England Patriots eventually, as that was also news. If you wanted to news dump something in the NFC or in the AFC East yesterday, that was your chance as New York very abruptly announcing the firing of Robert Saleh, their head coach. Coming up next, we will visit with our friend and NFL insider Diana Rossini to find out exactly how this went down and what the fallout looks like around New York. Next on Gojo and Golic. Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. And I don't think I felt worse for anyone yesterday outside of maybe Robert Saleh himself during the Jets news of his firing than our friend, senior NFL insider over at The Athletic, co-host of the Scoop City podcast, Diana Rossini, who had to be on with the Levitard show, guys, while all this important stuff was happening. Diana, we saw you walk off the set yesterday there. How are you doing in the fallout of all of that nonsense with that show?
Well, of course, on the Levitard show, we're discussing the most ridiculous ways to die. So I like to be a responsible guest. So I always try to, as you guys know, when I join the show, I like to give a nice 5-minute cushion before you go live to me, just so everyone knows I'm here. The sound looks good. The light's okay. So I've made this mistake before with the Le Batard show where I give the same courtesy and respect, but instead of just bringing me on for the information, they're like, oh, look, she's here. Let's have her weigh in if she thinks taking a selfie on the side of a mountain and falling to your death is a bold way to die. So I actually was like weighing in on the dumbest conversation I've ever had. And my phone right now, it's way more in front of me. It was like to my right, and I was working on the Devontae Adams story. So I was in touch with people in the New York building. So I see some things flashing, but I kind of was just like, let me just finish my thought and I'll do the quick peer. And then they broke the news to me that SALEH was fired. So then I looked down at my phone. I'm like, oh my gosh. So it was a scramble, but you guys would never do that to me, which is why I'm here today with you and not them.
Exactly. And we appreciate that. We will respect your time and the sanctity of the phone in that process. So take us through then what the next couple of hours were like for you. We hear and see the news that Robert SALEH is fired. This is a Woody Johnson decision, something about a police escort to the parking lot. What really went down yesterday at the Jets facility with all this?
Yeah, tons of information was certainly flying around. Tuesday morning story break like this, especially in New York, when it comes to the Jets. Look, this was expected. Robert SALEH getting fired isn't shocking. It's Robert SALEH getting fired now was shocking and stunning. And I was stunned by that because I really didn't think they would make this move. As someone who talks to, people around the league, as well as people in the New York building, the sense has always been Woody's going to be patient. Right? He decided to run this back this year to give SALEH an opportunity to coach Aaron Rodgers and to coach this really good roster. And for him to make this call, I think also stunned the building as well. Just knowing that we thought the leash was a little longer. So let me just take you back to yesterday. So the way it was explained to me and from the information I've been able to collect over the last 24 hours, Woody, flew back from London. He made some calls to people on the Jets, including Aaron Rodgers, and told them he was thinking about it. He did not inform people in the front office of New York or even the quarterback that this was the move he was definitely going to make. But Monday night, there was definitely a hint that Woody was not happy. He was not happy after the Denver loss. He certainly was not. And then obviously back in London, where he was once the ambassador of the UK for Donald Trump, he has a lot of connections there. And I know fans hear that and they probably go, who cares? Owners care. Owners care. Owners don't want to sit in their suite with their buddies and their friends. And I don't say that to be flippant. I just think their life is to put on a show and be proud of the investments that they've made. And for the Jets to lose in the fashion that they did in London did not sit well after losing to the Denver Broncos the week prior with the rookie quarterback and Bo Nix. So Woody makes this decision and, he calls Robert to his office and he just tells him. And SALEH attempted to give his side to it. We've got a top 5 defense. We got a top 5 special teams. I understand that I needed to make the playoffs, but you're not giving me enough time. And to Woody's opinion, or Woody's opinion was, no, I've given you plenty. I've given you 3.5 years. So they moved on. And so he was escorted out of the building. There's a team head of security. Every team has him, as you guys know. This guy, Bobby, is his name. He's awesome. He's been there for over 20 years. He's probably escorted a lot of coaches out now that I think about it.
Yeah.
And they're it's a friendly relationship. This wasn't like an official, sometimes we've like seen in the movies where like you're like kind of brought out with 2 arms, holding your computer in a box. From the way it was described to me from everyone there, including Robert SALEH, that's not how it went down. I think that was just really more of a formality.
So SALEH loses his job as you mentioned. He mentioned to Woody Johnson, "Hey, we've got a top 5 defense, a top 5 specials team. They certainly don't have a top 5 offense. Probably have a bottom 5 offense." So as we go forward, Nathaniel Hackett kept his job, but is he now coaching with the noose around his neck?
Yeah, that was my next question actually. After I saw SALEH fired, I reached out to someone there and asked, okay, Nathaniel Hackett next, because that was my thought as well, Mike. That is not what they're doing. They are not firing Nathaniel Hackett at this point. There are conversations being had, I know, at this exact moment about where they want to take this offense. Do they want to promote Todd Downing, the quarterback's coach, the former Tennessee Titans offensive coordinator, to have a bigger role in the play calling and maybe take away some of that from Nathaniel Hackett? But that has not been decided yet. I understand the Todd Downing push too internally, because there's a little bit of consistency with their offensive line coach, Keith Carter, who also comes from Tennessee, right? So they were there together. The running backs coach, Tony Dews, also with the Tennessee offense the same year. So there's a lot of people on the same page who understand things. And Nathaniel Hackett is overseeing all that. And he obviously does not come from that same, we'll just call it the tree, for this example. So we'll see if they make those moves. Jeff Ulbrich, the defensive coordinator, is now the interim head coach at this point. And he alluded to it in his press conference that they're going to take a look at their offense. So we'll see if Nathaniel Hackett loses some juice here, knowing that Aaron Rodgers is the one who's kept him afloat.
Yeah, I was going to say, for a lot of people that saw the reports yesterday, I think from CBS, that, there was talk that Robert Saleh was mulling firing Nathaniel Hackett, and then this happens, that those events are not related. There's no sort of cause and effect there that, Robert Saleh was going to potentially fire Aaron Rodgers' guy, and so now he's the one on the outs.
Yeah, it was explained to me that it wasn't a firing. It was a demotion. It just would have been a change of role. I think we all know that Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas are not ever going to fire Nathaniel Hackett as long as Aaron Rodgers wants Nathaniel Hackett in the building. So maybe that person that reported it got their own version, their own information, and sometimes that happens. But just from the conversations I had, it was more of a demotion, not necessarily you're out of the building. Because as you've seen over the last 2 years, at least since Aaron Rodgers has been there, he has a lot of power there, and a lot of the decision making involves Aaron. This firing of Robert Saleh, from what I can gather, did not get some sign off from Aaron. This was not Woody going, Aaron, what do you want? I do know that Aaron wanted Robert Saleh after last year. He was asked about him, and Rodgers wanted Saleh back. And from even just having conversations yesterday with people, they appear to have a pretty good relationship. I know we kind of joke about the choking hug and all those other things that we've seen. I wouldn't call it besties, but I think they were fine. I don't think that Rodgers looks at Robert Saleh as some incredible leader and coach, but I think he was just fine with him. It was okay. But at the end of the day, I do think we know how Aaron really, really felt, because if Woody did this, Woody felt good that there would be people in that building that would be in line with him.
Yeah. I was going to say, what about the rest of the locker room with that? We saw frustration from Quincy Williams and some guys on defense. Was this like a losing the locker room situation to any degree?
No, I never got that sense. And even the Athletics beat reporter, Zach Rosenblatt, who's really good, was sharing with me some stories from inside the locker room over the last few weeks. I just don't think there's enough juice either way. There's some locker rooms I'm covering right now, or at least guys that I'm talking to in locker rooms where, they're defeated, they're deflated. And then there's others where, they're high on life, the Commanders. I mean, it's just like they might as well just start selling ice cream in the locker room at this point. It's just like one big birthday party down there. I don't get a sense that the New York Jets have a very distinct way they feel about any of this. It's not as clear as you would think. I think there's definitely some frustrations with the way they're losing. There's definitely some frustrations with some of the things that we're seeing on offense. The penalties are a problem. There's no doubt about that. That was ridiculous on Sunday. But I do have a strong belief that Jeff Ulbrich is going to get the best version of the Jets that we've seen. I do. And that's just from being around them, knowing what Jeff brings, knowing the way the players respect him. I think we're going to see a really good surge. I think Buffalo is probably annoyed that this happened right now.
Yeah. So in an ancillary conversation, could that surge include Davante Adams? Would they still be interested in him? And I know Davante doesn't have a choice, but why the hell would Davante want to go to this mess? But would the Jets still try to trade for him?
Yeah, they're still having conversations with Vegas. And so are the New Orleans Saints, who are now dealing with a Derek Carr injury. And we're going to find out how long this will be. Right now, we don't have an exact timeline, but I feel pretty comfortable saying he's going to probably miss this Sunday's game. But look, I think Aaron can be pretty persuasive, and I think it's pretty obvious on offense right now. He needs someone he trusts outside Alan Lazard. Garrett Wilson came about a little bit more. The production was better, but it's not where it needs to be. And I think we talk about a surge with a change of coach. There's also going to be a surge if you add a Devontae Adams. I reached out to Robert Saleh yesterday, and he wasn't in the mindset or even in the right emotional state to divulge things that went wrong. In fact, I think he's going to take a few days here to try to collect his thoughts. But he did say one thing that I respect and I appreciate this about him. He's like, this team's going to go to the playoffs. They're so good. Like, he loves his team. He believes in them. So I think he's right. I think they're that good. I just think they need to probably get a new voice here to bring them together and find ways to win these games that they should be winning.
Certainly that frustration, like you mentioned, from these last couple of games that looked pretty abysmal at times offensively, going to be the driving force behind hopefully finding something new like that. Diana, we respect your time. We appreciate it here. I do have to ask, though, taking a selfie off the side of a mountain and falling down to your death, still a pretty awful way to die, right? We can all agree on that, even if the timing was bad.
It's embarrassing more than anything. Like, when I die one day, I don't want it to be in a shameful way. Like, I want to die in a proud way, like saving a baby or, running up the stairs of a house on fire. I don't want it to be because I'm leaning over the subway platform, to see like if I can touch a pole or something and then fall and get hit by a train. It's just not. Although yesterday when I was on Levitard, I did feel like I was jumping out of a plane without a parachute, the way that day went. So either way, I've landed and I'm alive, and I'm happy to be with you guys.
We are glad that you have landed safely. Obviously, everyone check out Diana as the senior NFL insider over at The Athletic. Check out Scoop City with her and Chase Daniels. Awesome stuff where you get great information like this. Diana, we appreciate the time as always, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Love you.
Thanks, Diana.
It is. You know what? I'm with Diana. I've always thought about that. Like, I don't want to go. And, like, this is no disrespect to people that are allergic to bees, but, like, imagine that being the way you go. Like, a bee sting ultimately is what takes you out. I couldn't imagine, like, looking my ancestors in the eye and going up and being like, who took you down? And it's dude with a stinger.
But it's still, it's something that you can't control. I mean, if you happen to be in an area where a bee stings you, there's nothing you could do about it. You can do something about taking a selfie on the side of a mountain. Like,
that is true.
Don't do it. Like don't do it. Don't do something that's dangerous and something as flippant as a selfie. It's just a horrible way to go.
You could try and coach the Jets. I feel like that puts, a lot of Jets fans, that probably puts them in an untimely grave, having to root for and watch that team. That's got to be, at least they've got the Mets right now. They had a great game last night. They get a win. They're on the verge of going to the NLCS. Life is pretty good. I saw Grimace was riding the subway. That was awesome.
The baseball, I mean, both the Dodgers and the Phillies on the verge of being ousted. We'll certainly talk about baseball, but hey, I could absolutely see the Jets going all in to get Devontae Adams now, for sure.
Like you said, if you're Devontae, why would you want to do that? Coming up next, we'll talk to one of the all-time great receivers in recent memory. Larry FITZGERALD, the future Hall of Famer, going to join us on Gojo and Golic. excited to talk some ball with one of the all-time greats, former 11-time Pro Bowler, all-decades team member, NFL wide receiver, Larry FITZGERALD, kind enough to join us here now on the show. Larry, good morning, man. How you doing?
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be with you all.
No, we're excited to have you here and talk a little ball right now. We were just talking a little bit off air before we get to some of the stuff going on in the NFL. Walk me through this. We're a father-son show, and right now you're a father getting to go through the recruiting process with your son, Devin, who's already been offered by your alma mater, so you've got that box checked with Pitt. But what's this been like going through this experience with your son, getting ready to walk the same path that you did all those years ago?
It's a lot of fun. I bet it's pretty similar to how I was with you all. You want him to, just enjoy it and not put too much pressure on him, just focusing on the things that he can actually control. And that's his attitude, his effort, and making sure he keeps his grades, up so he can keep his options, available. But it's a lot of fun. And it's changed a great deal. It used to be sending letters to the house and, calling the house and talk to you on the house phone. Now, they just all talk on Twitter, and it's very interesting how they build their relationships with the kids now.
And how early it happens. I know for me back, it was in the early 80s. It wasn't until you couldn't even take trips till after your senior year of football finished, and nobody really committed until their senior year. It's so different now of when the recruiting process starts, isn't it?
It is. It's much earlier, and I think as a player, that's beneficial to you to be able to make a decision, your junior year somewhere and be done with it. Then you can just play your senior year and have a really good time. You don't have to worry about injuries and things like that because you have a commitment that you've made already. And so I think from a mental perspective, it frees you up to go just have a great year and do the things that you want to do, and then it gives you a chance to be able to get there on campus in January, so you can start spring ball and actually give yourself a chance to compete when it comes to training camp.
Yeah, have you seen it? It feels like almost the expectation now is so different. These guys, it's become such a business that it's almost like they have to grow up faster in terms of that. But you see, Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, so many of these young guys coming in and making an impact right now. Does it feel like there's more pressure on guys to come in and perform early at the college level?
I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's that. I mean, you see it, at Alabama, you see it at Ohio State, but you're talking, two of the best programs in terms of recruiting access out of everybody. I mean, if you look at, like the blue collar teams like Wisconsin and places like that, where they still develop their kids. And, as they get older, they continue to mature. But, there are a few programs that are able to get to the elite of the elite, and they're able to be out there on the field early, and not only to be on the field, but actually contribute.
We just mentioned two freshman wide receivers, one at Alabama, one Ohio State. I want to lead that into wide receivers starting their pro careers being great right out of the gate. That didn't used to be the case with wide receivers. It took a couple years. Now, not for a Hall of Famer like you. You had over 100 catches and over 1,400 yards your second year, so you caught on pretty well. But for the most part, now you see the top wide receivers come in where it took a couple of years. Now they're great right out of the gate. What's the difference, do you think?
I think teams are really wanting to get their players active and involved early on. I think, the contracts are so large now. You want to know exactly what they're capable of doing. I had the luxury of coming in and, I had Anquan Bolin, who set, rookie records for, receptions and yardage. And so I had somebody who, was kind of the bell cow and allowed me to kind of grow into myself, over the first year of my career. Most of these players, you look at Marvin Harrison, he's coming in and, he's already the best receiver on the team. You look at Jamar Chase when he got there to Cincinnati, he's already the best player on the team. And so there's expectations that you're going to come in and be, receiver number one and produce at a high level immediately out of the gates. And I just think that expectation has definitely changed, especially guys who were drafted in the first, 20 picks, at the receiver position.
It's a great example of Justin Jefferson asked Kevin O'Connell, how does Cooper Kupp get open so much? And Kevin said, he motions, he moves, he's at different positions. There's a lot of work involved. And Justin was like, okay, that sounds like a lot of work, but I want to be involved in that. Talk about the offenses of today and from the McVay tree, all the motion that goes on to try and free up receivers.
Yeah, so go. It's really easy if you're going to just stay outside the numbers. It's really easy for defenses to identify you and be able to cover you, right? It is. But if you're moving, you're 3-by-1 and you're at three. You're 1-on-1 on the backside. If you want to create things on the other side of the field, like there's most emotions and shifts. And ability to find matchups, and then you give your quarterback the opportunity to read if it's man or zone, so he knows what he's doing with the looks. It just makes it much more much more difficult for teams to be able to like clamp down on you and know where you're going to be. And his route tree is massive. I mean, he catches balls in breaking, he catches balls out breaking, catches balls over the top. He's involved in the screen game. He can beat you intermediate pass routes. I mean, like he really has no weaknesses in his game, and obviously he's unbelievably intelligent and smart and retains a lot of information. And then he plays with a high level of competitiveness too. And so, like when you have all of those things, all those strong attributes, it's really difficult to hold you back.
He's been an incredible receiver from day one that he got into the league and been one of the standard bearers. I want to talk about another young receiver, though. We had the news pop that the Jets decided to fire their head coach, Robert Saleh, which is obviously big for them early in this season, but so much of this year marked by that offense trying to play catch-up quick with Aaron Rodgers, who's come over as a future Hall of Famer and a guy that you've been around certainly and been a peer of for a bunch of years. Garrett Wilson, a guy who's a young guy in that room having to adjust. You at one point were a young receiver with the Cardinals when Kurt Warner comes over, a future Hall of Famer who you guys eventually went to a Super Bowl together. How difficult is that adjusting period, having a veteran with that much time under task coming in and having to kind of learn what makes them tick in the offense?
Well, I mean, it takes some time. It really does. In his first couple of years, like there was not a lot of continuity. And he still made unbelievable plays no matter who was playing quarterback, even before Aaron got there. And you saw the game in London. I mean, I think he had like 19 targets, 18 targets. Like there's no shortage of opportunities. Like he's being featured in every single thing they do in that offense. And I think him and Aaron haven't been like as sharp and on point as you would like to see. But I know as the season goes on, they'll find that continuity. He's just too talented of a player. I mean, he is so silky smooth getting in and out of those breaks. I mean, golly, I mean, his feet, his ball control, the way he's able to adjust the back shoulder balls, and he's actually really, really tough and strong across the middle too. I've seen him take some big shots going across. He does not fear, the middle of the field, and so that's a quarterback's dream to be able to have a receiver that is going to go make tough catches for you. And then actually when he gets the ball in his hands after the catch, I mean, he's really, really good with that as well.
They talk about sometimes in the draft about it's the timing or the team that you go to that can really help unfold your career. Maybe great wide receivers who didn't go to great quarterback teams, but can great wide receivers overcome Midland quarterback play? Or because you don't have the ball in your hand to start, is it not possible?
Yeah, I'll give you one example. And like he's had the best of all time play for him, but then he's played with a lot of other players. You look at Mike Evans and what he's done throughout the course of his career. I mean, he's played with the greatest of all time in Tom Brady, and he's had 1,000 yards. He's played with Jameis Winston, had 1,000 yards. He's played with Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's had 1,000 yards. Like he's played with Baker Mayfield. He had like you or either one of you two could throw the ball to Mike Evans, and he's still gonna make 1,000 yards every single season. But like he's a guy who doesn't matter what the circumstances are, doesn't matter who's throwing it to him, doesn't matter who the offense coordinator is. The guy just flat out gets it done. In my opinion, he's the most underrated wide receiver of this generation. Like he still never really gets the love and respect that people always say, who's your top five? And you hear Devontae, you hear Cooper Kupp, you hear Jamar Chase, you hear Justin Jefferson, and you hear all these names. And then Mike Evans is always excluded from that group. And the dude is just, I mean, you watched him last week, against Atlanta. I mean, they didn't win the game, but golly, the dude just makes play after play after play after play, and he's been a lot of fun to watch.
I'm glad you said it. It's so true. The guy has just produced at such an insanely consistent level and made everyone around him better because of that. So a guy who I hope continues to get his flowers while he's still around doing his thing in the league. Mike Evans has been a baller for so long.
And Mike, there's another guy that I've been like thoroughly impressed with over the first 5 weeks of the season, and for reasons that are like you guys both played and understand, like the business of football can be very difficult. And what Jamar Chase went through this offseason, not getting the deal that he rightfully deserves. The guy has proven already through 5 games, like he's high in that conversation of the best guy in the business, right? And like it's a paralyzing thing to think. You're going out on the football field, you're risking your body with injury, and you also want to be a great team player. And he's put that behind him and just been dominant, man. I mean, he made a play last week on a little screen play, turned into a 60, 70-yard play. I mean, the dude is just unbelievable. He runs through tackles like Derrick Henry. He can run past you. He can outquick you. He can go up and get the ball at the highest point. I mean, the guy is special. And whatever deal he gets, I hope it comes sooner than later, because he's definitely earning his keep right now.
That guy is no doubt. I mean, he's got a Brinks truck parked outside his house at some point. Whenever it comes, it's going to be there. And the longer the Bengals wait, I think the more money that just keeps getting added to the vault the way that he's playing right now. Him and Joe Burrow have been incredible here. I want to finish up before we get to the awesome promotion that you're a part of with DraftKings that everyone can check out here on the weekends, all Sundays throughout October. I want to talk about a guy who wasn't also a former teammate of yours. Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals just got a big win over the 49ers this past weekend. I know you got Kyler early in his career. How surprised have you been by the way he's been able to turn it around under this new coaching staff?
No surprises at all. I mean, the first thing that jumps out to you when you're around Kyler is just like he really has no weaknesses. I mean, his arm strength, he can throw it from any angle. He can roll left and throw it. He can roll right and throw it. You saw the 50-yard touchdown play he made this week. When he pulled that and ran away from defensive backs. He really has no weaknesses in his game. So him playing well is no surprise. But I do really feel like the Cardinals, they're playing at their best when it's running through James Conner. He brings such a physical force to the game. I mean, you see when he runs, I mean, the guys, he galvanizes the group. The toughness and tenacity that he plays with really brings that physicality that you want to have in a football game. And, he just took over that game in that second half on Sunday. And, it makes it really easy for an offense when you can hand it to a guy. And you don't have to block it up perfectly, because James will make one guy miss and he'll run through another guy's face and makes it go. And so, when Kyler's playing great and James is doing his thing, and you can give Marvin his opportunities, he showed up in a big way on the fourth down play. That you call the number of a rookie, and he goes up and makes the play to be able to keep the game going. I mean, it shows you that this team is poised for a really, really good run. They got a great test this week against the Packers, which is no easy feat to go to Lambeau and play.
Yeah, I say you got a proud tradition in that Cardinals wide receiver room that you've been a big part of, and it seems like Marvin's right in line with what you guys have laid there.
Yeah, I mean, he's so gifted. I got a chance to meet him for the first time this week, and it really struck me is how poised he was, how calm and collected he was, and it shows there's no moment that's too big for him. I'm really excited to be able to have him here in Arizona, and I can watch him. He's already built a really nice relationship with my son, which I'm really thankful for. And, so I'm really pulling for him.
No, that's awesome to hear, and it sounds like going to be a very long and successful career for him there, the same way that you had in the desert for so many years. Let's talk about what you got going on here with DraftKings, Larry. DraftKings is offering a free-to-play Pink'em pool every NFL Sunday in October, donating $1 for the first 20,000 entries every week to the Larry FitzGerald Foundation to fund breast cancer research and support. To enter, everyone go and visit DraftKings.com/Pink'em. That's Pinkem, and submit your weekly picks. Obviously, a cause near and dear to your heart, Larry. Why should people get out and make sure that they're a part of this?
Well, I'm elated. I really appreciate you guys recognizing, DraftKings and their commitment to community. I lost my mother to breast cancer years back. My executive director just beat breast cancer. So a lot of people around me have been affected adversely by this heinous disease. And, over the last 5 years, we've raised over 500,000. Our goal is to raise another 100,000. So if you're listening, just go out and enter the pools. You got the whole month of October to get involved. It means a lot to so many people, and that to know DraftKings is what listen to Foxhole means a great deal to me.
Again, DraftKings.com/Pink'em. Go and submit your picks, donating $1 for the first 20,000 entries every week to the Larry FitzGerald Foundation to fund breast cancer research. And like you said, Larry, to try and do the best we can to knock out this heinous disease. This has been an absolute joy, Larry. We really appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much. Best of luck to you and your son. We're excited to see how the future goes for him and for both of you guys.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. The WNBA Finals is set. The Minnesota Lynx went out and took care of business in Game 5, defeating the Sun 88-77. They're headed to the finals where they will face the Liberty. Nafisa Collier led the way for the Lynx with 27 points and 11 boards. Minnesota, the big underdog in the finals, plus 215 to win the series. Liberty at minus 260. Breanna Stewart is plus 140 to win the series MVP. Check out all those odds over on the DraftKings Sportsbook. Should be a great series coming up in the W, and should be a great segment for us. Coming up here, we're going to have Jason Fitz join the program. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Hour number 2 kicks off here with our buddy Jason Fitz. You can catch him hosting Inside Coverage in the College Football Power Hour over at Yahoo Sports, at Jason Fitz on Twitter. Stolen Valor with the 5-star shirt on Rivals, Fitzy. You strike me as more of a 3-star guy.
Well, look, I know what was your rating coming out of high school?
Listen, it takes one to know one. I was a 3-star guy, so I know one when I see one.
Yeah, this is. I went to the Rivals 5-star camp in Jacksonville at the end of June. The one thing that you know is if I'm around a bunch of football players and I get this shirt, it's just because they had extras, right? Like there was never a chance where I was a 5-star. I was the guy that they were like, hey, here's a backpack, some sweats. Like, oh yeah. But the great thing is when I do go to the gym, I wear it all the time, and I can see, like, especially during the summer when you see other kids at the gym that are obviously football players, you can see their side eye and like the Rivals thing. And I'm like, yeah, just 5-star, lift them, chest day, let's go. Woo!
See, Dad, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, because there are certain shirts for that reason, though, that I can't wear out in public or when I'm working out. Like doing the job and being around sports for a while, I've gotten a chance to cover the service academies on occasion. I get to call Air Force game this weekend on the road against New Mexico, and I've gotten gear from, I think, Army and Air Force both. and I can't, like, I made the mistake one day of wearing the Army hoodie going down on a walk by the beach, and as soon as I got down there, I think I took it off and turned it inside out because I live in so much fear of someone giving me the thank you for your service that usually comes with that, and knowing it would be stolen valor. It terrifies me. So I love them. They're great looking hoodies, but I can't wear them out anywhere.
I have them in my closet too, from all the service academies, and will not wear them for that reason alone. No, I want nobody, I don't want to misrepresent. I don't want anybody telling me thank you for your service so that I have to explain that I didn't serve. And I just don't want, it's stolen valor that I want no part of. I have so much respect for the men and women who served our country that I am not going to get involved in that.
Can I be honest with you guys? This is what happens when you're large human beings. Because like years ago, we played a concert over at Air Force, and we got hoodies, sweats, and everything. Like they hooked us up with so much gear. For a solid year, all of us that went to the gym wore Air Force stuff because we had so much of it. We wore it to the gym every day. Never even occurred to anybody to walk up to me and say, thank you for your service. Like I just didn't, there was never a spot where somebody thought that was real. It never occurred to me that would be a possible. Now you guys are sitting there saying this, and I'm like, I was a terrible human being in the gym wearing Air Force stuff, and but nobody ever assumed that I was in the Air Force. This is what happens when you guys are actually men.
Yeah, you're not terrible for doing that because nobody would assume that you were in the service academy. So
right
you were
now,
fine.
I'm getting yoked. I don't know. I'm getting yoked.
People would be like, "Oh, isn't that cute? He's trying to be a wannabe." You know.
I would say, isn't that cute? Right. His dad was probably in the Air Force, and now he's wearing his dad's clothes here to the gym. Fitzy, deviating away from your stolen valor 5-star status. Last week you came on with us and said you don't think Davante Adams is getting traded to from the Las Vegas Raiders. A week later, and in the fallout of the Jets firing Robert Saleh, their head coach, which is obviously one of the names and teams that everyone kept mentioning for Davante Adams, do you feel better, worse, or the same about your take?
I feel the same about my take overall. And again, I'm dying on this hill. Everybody says I'm crazy. Even people within the Raiders organization that I trust have said I'm crazy. I don't think the value is going to be there. It's a tough pill to swallow to think about what we're hearing. And I think some of the reports we've seen from guys and girls that cover the league since then about, well, it's going to be really difficult and the Raiders are not going to let him go for nothing. Like some of this is conjecture, but I think some of it is also everybody preparing for the possibility that there might not be a middle ground. Like the fact that they want a second rounder and that feels rich to the rest of the league. Like, how do you feel about letting Davante go in the middle of the season when I know this team doesn't look good, but man, like you're still at least competitive. What message does it send you? Let him go for what, some people have told me off the record looks like a fourth rounder and a conditional or what teams want to offer. Like, why would you let Davante go for that? I do think that the Jets will make a more aggressive offer now because this is obviously Aaron Rodgers' team. I just don't know if they'll get to a level that makes it make sense.
But he's done playing for the Raiders, right?
I mean, what else? What are they going to do? Like, what if all they're looking at is a 4th-round pick? Mark Davis says, no, I'm not going to take that. You're going to have to come to work. At that point, what is he going to sit out the season? Are we just going to pretend that there's a hamstring injury for the whole year? Like, this is pretty unprecedented in that sense. Like, I think part of what the team is doing here is they're able to say to his whole camp, hey, we gave it a good old college try. We tried. They don't want to pay his remaining salary, and they want to get something back for him. Nobody wants to pay the money that they're going to have to pay, and they know that the Raiders are pinned up against it. So I think this is, and by the way, I don't think this is necessarily a Raiders issue. I think any team right now trying to trade a star player that is 31 years old, that's in the last year of a deal until it can be reworked, that's going to want big new money, that has money left this year. I don't care what the logo is on the helmet. I think you'd see that there's very little trade market for him. So I think, honestly, they've just gotten to this point where now, are you really going to feel comfortable trading him for a bag of lime Skittles? I love lime Skittles, but I don't think you can justify that in return.
Certainly cannot. And so it's going to take a price tag that I think is going to be, like you said, worth prying him out there. For the Jets who are still going to be a part of this, Fitz, we've talked a lot about the Robert Saleh firing already today here. What was your biggest takeaway from that news?
I think the timing of it was a little curious to me. I expected at some point he'd be gone, but here's the biggest question I'd ask you. If you are judged by Super Bowls, and the Jets supposedly wanted to be judged by Super Bowls in the Aaron Rodgers era, when has an interim coach ever come in and won a Super Bowl? As much as Jets fans right now are saying, oh, God, just get rid of Saleh. He's a bum. I heard people on radio this morning saying that the Eagles could learn from this. Go fire Sirianni. Okay, Cool. When has that ever worked to actually win you a Super Bowl? Bad teams fire their coaches early in the season, and bad teams then sometimes become mediocre teams. But what we thought were supposed to be contending great teams that could win championships, they don't win championships after they've fired their coaches. So this to me means it's a lost season. And now the Jets are going to have to start asking themselves, was all of this worth it? Like, how many wins you going to have to get to make all of the chaos of the Aaron Rodgers? You went all in on it right now. You're trying to win today. You're not winning. You're not going to win this year. You don't even know if you'll bring it back next year. There's chaos everywhere. Like, was this worth it?
Oh, it absolutely was not worth it if they don't make a run at the Super Bowl. When you put in for a Tom Brady to Tampa Bay or an Aaron Rodgers to New York, that's the goal. Tampa Bay hit it, and the Jets aren't going to hit it. I want to move to college, and looking at the Alabama loss certainly is the most, I guess we would say, embarrassing loss. Number one, and then losing to Vandy. But Alabama loses, Tennessee loses, Missouri loses, Michigan loses, USC loses. Which one hurt the team's chance the most at a college playoff?
Well, and that's a really good point, Mike, because, like, let's be real. The Alabama loss was staggering, but it didn't hurt their chances at the playoff. I think Missouri was sort of a fraud where they were. So taking that loss, to me, that's the big damage. We're going to reach this spot where there's just not a ton of room left for SEC teams. I don't know, and we don't know yet, how many SEC teams they're going to be comfortable putting in the college football playoff. So I think Tennessee still has plenty of real estate in front of them. They got bit by Nico Iamaleava having a Nico Iamaleava young quarterback game. Like, that's just... you look at that last play of the game where he ran out of bounds, didn't even give his team a chance to win the football game. That was one of 3 or 4 key mistakes in this game. So for him personally, so I think, Tennessee, I still believe they can right that. They'll be fine. Alabama is going to be fine. What's going to get tricky is all the rest of these SEC teams. That's why I think Ole Miss this year, Ole Miss versus LSU, is such a substantial matchup. I don't think either of those teams necessarily get in the playoff because they win this game. But this game feels like it could be a disqualifier for the playoff for the loser because there's only so much room for at-large bids to go to SEC teams in my mind. So I think for a team like Missouri that already didn't really belong, it was a big statement. I also think we normalized a little bit. Missouri was too high and Texas A&M was too low. So I think that matchup really proved that to a lot of people.
Yeah, Texas A&M, I have a feeling, is going to start inserting themselves forcefully into a lot of these conversations here pretty soon. We know the one team that was able to keep themselves in the conversation this last weekend was Miami. They go through a massive fourth-quarter comeback led by Cam Ward, who's going to get all the Heisman buzz once people watch the replay of that, since so many missed it live because it was at the ass crack of dawn. But Fitz, coming off this weekend, between that and the Clemson result, like, how do we think that game's handicapped on a neutral field right now? We left Clemson for dead most people after the Georgia game. People kind of box score watched after that. They go out and get another win this weekend over the Florida State team that was supposed to be the leader in the conference this year. How close do you think it is between Clemson and Miami at this point?
Closer than we want to give it credit for. And Mike, a really good point on people probably are only going to see a lot of the highlights from the Miami game, and they'll watch the fourth quarter and they'll forgive the first 3 quarters. My question is, if you're willing to forgive all the mistakes that led to the fourth quarter for Miami, which I am, it was a Herculean effort for Cam Ward. Are we not also then willing to forgive one half of bad football against one of the best teams in the country? Because let's remember that Clemson-Georgia game was 3-0 at the half. And it was tougher than anybody thought. That Clemson defense showed up, and we thought, man, maybe they're going to give them a game. Now Georgia broke it open in the second half. Well, okay, that's fine. Losing to Georgia because of one bad half of football is a forgivable sin. I think I may have written off Clemson too soon. I think as a collective, we were ready for, well, Clemson doesn't have any transfers. Okay, Klubnik doesn't look like he's really the answer. All of these narratives. And you watch since then, and they've played really smart, solid football. So I think, frankly, you look at the way they're playing. Clemson doesn't beat themselves. They don't make a lot of mistakes. Feels like Clemson's going to give Miami much more of a game than any of us anticipated, and which means, by the way, we can't count Clemson out of the college football playoff conversation yet. And we did a few weeks ago. We were done with them. And now, doesn't look that way.
As far as we another team that we keep wanting to prove it, and they have always had Ohio State and Michigan in the way, is Penn State. They sit at number 4 now and play a 2-loss USC team, a loss to Michigan and Minnesota. How much have they proven it? And boy, James Franklin talking about the trip to USC, leaving a day early, saying they need to make at the airport by Penn State, a longer runway so they can take off from there, so they don't have to drive an hour to Harrisburg. He was going off on the travel situation. But how important of a prove-it game is this for Penn State?
I mean, it's huge. And also, I think Penn State was underrated when they were 8 or 9. Man, I have a hard time believing Penn State's really the number 4 team in the country. Like, it's just, I don't know. There's something to number 4.
This is the problem that we get to at the beginning of the year, where because everyone loses, we're just shuffling teams up to the top and going, all right, well, you haven't lost the big one yet, so now you get to be number 4. When, kind of like you said with Missouri, Fitz, I don't know if anyone's watched Penn State this year and gone, that's the 4th best team in the country.
No, they are. I will say the move-it offensive coordinator revolutionized the fact that we finally see real offense. Look at Drew Aller's depth of target. Look at his accuracy when he's throwing 10 to 15 yards down the field. Things we didn't know Drew Aller could do. He does really well. And I do believe in the athleticism of Penn State. I don't know that I've seen enough that makes me say, oh, yeah, Penn State's the answer. And I think the other interesting part of this one, Senior, is that you've got a USC team that the wheels fall. I mean, now they lose this game. Man, all of a sudden, do the rumbles become roars? Like, the Lincoln Riley USC wasn't expected to lose 4 or 5 games this year. And that's where the season heads if they lose this game. So I think you got a USC team playing on their coast with their backs against the wall. They should come out with the thunder of the gods. I just think Drew Aller and the way that Penn State offense has played this year is getting that deserves a little bit of credit. I think Penn State wins this game, but I don't believe Penn State's nearly in the same category as what we think of for at least for Texas and Ohio State at 1 and 2.
I was going to say that's the big matchup of this weekend is Ohio State, Oregon. We only got a couple minutes left here, Fitz, but how you feeling about that one? Has Ohio State shown you enough this year where they should be overwhelmingly favored in the Big Ten still?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I think it's crazy that they use that Iowa game as a run game practice. Like they just were like, we're going to show that we can run the football over. We know we can throw, so we're just going to run. The other crazy part of this is, again, go back. Don't look at the box score on Dylan Gabriel. Go back and watch some of this. Like, I know his completion percentage is through the roof. So is his bonehead throw percentage at this point to me. Like, just for a smart quarterback that's played a lot of football, he makes a couple of dumb throws a game. It really cost him in the first half of Michigan State in the red zone, which I think is pretty inexcusable. I just wonder, I picked Oregon to win the Natty this year. And because of the explosiveness and because I believed in Dylan Gabriel, a quarterback with experience, I haven't seen any of that makes me comfortable with that pick. Like, Oregon hasn't come together yet. Dylan hasn't played smart enough football. Like, if Dylan Gabriel makes the mistakes that he's made in the first few games, he will be the reason that Oregon loses this football game.
It's going to be fascinating. They finally figured out their offensive line. They shuffled some guys around on the interior that has that group in a much better place to potentially handle what Ohio State does defensively up front. But still, certainly, I'm with you. I had picked them to win the Big Ten. I thought they were going to be their representative for the college football playoff. And we'll do a previews on Friday. I'm picking Ohio State to win this game on the road in a crazy environment. Like, Ohio State has not faced an environment yet this year that's going to challenge them the way Autzen does. But it's going to be an exciting weekend. Very different slate than we thought we were getting last weekend. That one delivered big. Can all the star matchups and rankings matchups this weekend hold up to that standard? We will wait and see. Again, check him out at Jason Fitz on Twitter. The Yahoo Sports College Football Power Hour is where you can see him. Fitzy, we appreciate it, man. You're a 3-star in our book. Thanks, buddy.
5.
I didn't stutter.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. Fellas, let's stick with college football and dive into Project Rudy, okay? Basically a proposal for a super league in college football named after Rudy Rudiger, 70 teams, 4 conferences. A lot of money. We're talking $9 billion. That could make things happen. Now, in Ross Dellinger's report, he got some good feedback from ADs. So we do have an uncertain future for college football. It seems like everybody's shifting conferences all the time. Is this a possible, likely even outcome?
Maybe. This really comes down to, and the funny part about this with Project Rudy, which, by the way, whoever these, I mean, it's private equity guys that are at the helm of this. So people involved in this, it is a project called Project Rudy, but it is being put on by 3 guys. The architect of this are Kevin Mayer, Evan Richter, and Tom Staggs, former Disney employees on more of the corporate side who now work for a private equity company called Smash Capital that's trying to put up the money for this and get their percentage of this. How dare you weaponize our Rudy, the one of the greatest college football movies of all time, for your craven, ghoulish attempt to go and reimagine the sport here. That being said, Dad, this is going to come down to 2 things and 2 things only. And those 2 things are 2 people, and their names are Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti. That's all everyone throughout the entirety of this piece kept coming back to is you got to convince those 2 guys. Nobody else, those 2 guys. And based on everything we've heard, it doesn't sound like Greg Sankey believes they need all that much help from the outside. So that's why before we get into all the details of this, I'll say for anyone wondering, how much should I brace for impact on this particular report or the other one that you saw come out a couple weeks ago? My answer would be not much. A version of it, which I think we're going to get. I think this Super League model is something that we've been pointing to for a long time. But this version of it, Dad, where you've got a company coming in, trying to infuse capital into the sport, trying to take their percentage of the profit that comes on the back end of this as they distribute more money to all of the schools, the 70 schools that would be involved in this Super League, that would have multiple tiers of earning based on on-field performance, based on the brand impact and the eyeballs that people bring to TV, that could, in some versions of this, have promotion and relegation the way that we've always wanted to here. All of that still comes back to these are people that are doing this so they can come in and take a percentage of that. And for Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, the sentiment seems to be, based on the reporting from Ross Dellinger at Yahoo who wrote this, hey, why wouldn't we just do this our damn selves?
Right, and not give a percentage to the venture capitalists. But the venture capitalists are saying that no school of the 70 will make anything less than they're already making from their media rights deals from whatever networks are involved in the conferences. So, and they're saying that money can really only go up, and it'll be tiered. It will be unequally given. The top 16, and on down.
Yeah,
as far as the money.
A quick reference to that. The tier 1, the top 16 teams and schools would earn by year 4 of this. This was like a 12-year projection they did. By year 4, between $130 million by that year to up to $250 million by year 12. The next 22 teams in year 2 would earn between $60 and $110 million, and the last 32 teams would earn between $30 and $60 million. One model proposed also would have promotion and relegation. Another would have 8 permanent teams near the top of the sport, because as they break down in this, there's basically like 6 to 8 teams that do the vast majority of the television eyeballs in this sport, and it's the ones you'd expect: Notre Dame, Alabama, Texas, Georgia, all those ones that have been at the top of most of the TV ratings list to begin with.
Yeah, they're talking about consolidating the media rights of the 70 schools under one agreement once the current structure is done within 7 to 10 years, and having one not one network, but consolidating the media. I listen. Is there part of me that thinks other commissioners outside separate Sankey and Petitti, that the other commissioners, of which there are just a couple in the power, and schools even within the conferences don't want Sankey and Petitti to have the power that they're going to have, right? I mean, the power that they do have? Forget, it's not that they're going to have; it's the power they do have. The power they do have. Do they want those 2 guys having the power, or would they just rather hand it off to somebody who would have have an equal eye, even though the money split is unequal, an equal eye to all 70 teams?
I don't think they would have an equal eye towards all 70 teams, though. I think what you see based on how these people are coming in is saying, we understand all of you are not as valuable. And I think that's the thing, again, when we talk about private equity and venture capital and these people that come in that are ruthless efficiency monsters in the name of maximizing profit, they're not going to treat Vanderbilt and a bunch of these teams at the bottom.
No.
Shout out to Vandy for the big
I understand
win.
that.
They're not
I
going
understand
to treat
that.
them the same.
I understand that. Well, you just said the unequal payment. If I misspoke, I misspoke. They're not going to pay the teams, and they're not going to treat them equally. But I'm asking, would these other teams and other conferences rather have this run by somebody that's not Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti? That's my question.
I'm sure they might, but I think this is a devil you know versus a devil you don't, because inviting these people in invites a host of other problems that you might not know of. Whereas right now, again, I think format-wise, we're going to get here. Like, there are too many people with connections. They mentioned in this article, Jack Swarbrick, Notre Dame's former athletic director, one of the people involved in this project, a guy who has helped, with Notre Dame, shape the college football playoff and a lot of the meaningful changes in the sport over the last decade. So this is someone that has wielded considerable power before and knows a lot of the people that are involved in this decision-making process. I'm not poo-pooing it by any means, but Dad, Greg Sankey went on a podcast with Urban Meyer not too long ago and was asked about this and said, I don't want to dumb down the Southeastern Conference to be a part of some Super League notion with 70 teams and some people speculate would happen. They want to be us, and that's on them to figure it out, not me to bring myself back to earth. Like, this is the sentiment coming from the person in charge of making these decisions. But what I do think, and the sentiment leaking out of this article, is they might look at this and say, yeah, I think this the people coming in, Smash Capital, would take like 15% or something like that, 5 to 12%.
5 to 12
of the profit, 5 to 12% of the profit or something like that range. They would take their cut of this. These guys are basically going to say, we can structure all this ourselves. Yeah, you might be able to give us a little bit more money, but what if we don't have to give you that 12% or whatever the hell it would be on the back end of this? We can do this in a sport that has never had anyone in charge. And for people that have gone out here and taken power by, might making right. That is the history of college football, is we have more resources, we are more popular in this area of the country, and our teams win more, so we get to call the shots here. Why would they ever cede that control when they're the ones with their hands on the wheel? It could be, Dad, you can be right. Other schools could be saying, hey, we're sick and tired of this being two conferences and two commissioners and really one that kind of run the sport, but they don't really have a say in how this goes. It would be, would those two people in power decide we want to give that up potentially to someone else, and I can't see a world where that happens.
Well, maybe I'm missing it. How does Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti have the power to have domain over everybody and make a new system? Do these two have the right and the power to make a new system? They have all the voting. They can get all 70 teams under one roof, and they have that power?
There's no voting here. We have the majority of the good teams in the sport. And so we get to decide what the direction of the sport looks like, because you need us. Whatever version of this that people want to talk about with a Super League is going to require the now 18 teams in the Big Ten and all of the great teams in the SEC. Those two control their access to whatever this next version of the sport is going to look like. And so because they have the most valuable properties in the sport, yes, they control the decision-making going forward.
So then who decides if they want to bring in the venture cap, the Smash equity? Who decides that? Who makes that decision? Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti? Or is there...
Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti. Yeah, to simplify it down to the simplest form, yes.
I find that hard to believe. That school presidents aren't involved. School presidents are what run the NCAA. That's
school presidents are what won the NCAA. We're talking about a for-profit venture. Like, this new league would be for-profit, revenue sharing with players, money going out here to the schools that they would still use in that way. But remember, the NCAA is a not-for-profit. Like, that's the other part of this, you know, elaborate sham of amateurism that's gone on for years. This would be fully for-profit. We'd be saying, hey, this is professional sports, basically, that we're dealing with here. And so they wouldn't be beholden, I do not believe, to those same people in those same ways.
So there are ADs within the SEC conference that like this plan. over what Greg Sankey and Tony Petit. I guess that's what I'm not understanding, that if all the ADs would want this, would want a separate entity running this 70-team conglomerate instead of Tony Petit and Greg Sankey, that I don't understand how they couldn't get that.
I mean, Dad, I'm sure plenty of people in the Jets building didn't want Robert Saleh fired, and did that matter?
Greg Sankey doesn't own the top 70 teams. He doesn't own the Big 12 and the ACC and the Big 10. He doesn't own it. He may have a powerful voice. I get it, but when it comes down to that, then so you're telling me that this 70-team league would only be approved through the venture capitalists by Greg Sankey and Tony Petit. They're the only two that can decide this.
I'm saying if they aren't on board, this isn't happening. Interpret that however you will.
Huh. I find that hard to believe, that if all the ADs and the other conference leaders, commissioners, want this, want something separate. And I could see them wanting something separate. I could see Greg Sankey wanting to control because, we've discussed this. We've discussed the power conferences breaking off. And I said it will never happen because Greg Sankey's going to want to be in charge. And all the other commissioners are going to want to work together. And Greg Sankey's going to want to be the top dog. And he's got the top conference. I completely understand that. But I could see them wanting somebody other than Greg Sankey running the show, as long as they're all getting their money. As long as they're all getting at least the money they were making from the media rights deal or more, that is now that they have one entity that's not one of their own. Because, listen, why do the ADs or the commissioners of the Big 12 and the ACC, why would they want... I think they would like to have somebody else oversee it and not have to answer to Greg Sankey and Tony Petit.
Dad, they absolutely might. I'm saying, what influence do they have right now to make that happen? What have we seen from the recent history of the ACC or the Big 12 or like these conferences in the position they're in right now, who are scrambling to onboard teams to try and maintain their status so they don't get poached into the ground like these other leagues that we've seen, while the ACC fights legal battles with some of the biggest names in its conference, and round we go with all commissioners, by the way, that are new. Like, that's the other part of this. Tony Petit feels tenured at this point and is not. Greg Sankey has the one that's been around here and been around the block for a long time. But I guess I just keep saying, I understand completely, Dad, your sentiment. They might not want those guys in charge anymore. I don't know what avenue they have to make that not happen based on the current structure of the sport, which there is no structure. There are, hey, the Big Ten and the SEC run this thing right now. We've seen that's why they're doing their little schedule alliance. That's why they're getting ready to meet together to talk about what they envision for the future of the sport, while the rest of us wait to find out.
Well, I guess that's this whole thing at a loss for me then. Who has the decision-making power? You say the Big Ten and the SEC, especially Greg Sankey, has always had the power, but we've never been in this position where a venture capitalist wants to jump in with $9 billion, and we have all kind of changes going on in college football. This would be the latest, the separation of football from the NCAA. So this isn't something we're used to. I'm just trying to figure out who has the deciding voice in this vote. Is there a vote? Who decides it? To me, that's what's kind of blowing my mind.
But I guess I'm saying you're someone, you've talked about understanding the structure of this. That's why I'm a little stunned that you're stunned that the answer is Greg Sankey and Tony Petit. Like, they are the ones who you're asking who's going to have the biggest impact on this. Everyone else can want who they want. And again, this isn't just me. This is the reporting from Ross in this article that basically says, unless you can convince these two guys, you don't have a real good shot of making this happen.
Yeah, that kind of blows my mind, not going to lie.
Well,
in something this new.
College football is a place that has not ever made sense and will not ever made sense. This is not a rational place. This is not a place that's ever been governed. It has been lawless. People say Wild West now. Buddy, we've been that if you've ever paid attention. There's nobody in charge, and so the people that have been here longest with the most expensive toys get to tell everyone else what's going to happen.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr., and Mike Golic Sr. So normally the reports of the Patriots planning to start Drake May would be the biggest news in the AFC East, but of course with the Robert Saleh firing yesterday, we're barely getting to it now, just late in the show. So we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but apparently it is official. Do you guys think that this is the right move? A lot of talk here in Boston about how it's kind of perhaps a panic move because of the loss and like deviating from the original plan. So what's your take on this situation, fellas?
Dad, I probably would have waited at least a week because I don't feel like trotting Drake May out behind this line against this Houston Texans pass rush is necessarily the way I want him introduced to NFL football as a starter. What about you?
I think this is a panic move. We knew we talked about this the other day. Jacoby Brissett was a bridge quarterback, and it was just a matter of how the season went, how Jacoby was playing, and more importantly, how ready they felt Drake May was by what they could tell, which we're not at practice, how he is on the practice field. I mean, I'll never forget Andy Reid when the year that Patrick Mahomes wasn't playing, Alex Smith played. I would text with Andy, and he would talk about how Patrick practiced, how he had the offense down, how he was ready to go, even though they waited that year with Alex Smith. And what you can tell in practice, preseason obviously, but then in practice during the week, is a quarterback ready to go. But you also have to take into consideration the rest of the team. I mean, Jacoby Brissett is averaging getting hit 10 times a game. 10 times a game. And this is a veteran quarterback who should know to get rid of the ball quicker than a rookie. You know Drake May is going to hang on to the ball too long or get rid of it too quick and make a bad throw. I mean, I'm not sure I understand this outside of they just are starting the clock on Drake May, trying to see what they have in Drake May, but they are almost putting him in a situation where he almost has both hands tied behind his back.
Dad, any guess who the number one offense in terms of allowing their quarterback to be pressured is in the NFL so far this season?
I'm going to say New England.
You would be correct. Jacoby Brissett has been the most pressured quarterback in football so far this year. He has been pressured on a staggering 50% of his dropbacks so far this season. Dad, any idea which defense in the NFL is number one in quarterback pressure percentage so far through the 2024 season?
I'm going to say the Houston Texans.
That would be the Houston Texans pressuring opposing quarterbacks on 42% of their dropbacks. You see where I'm getting at here. This doesn't feel like it's going to be a good time. Now, Drake May and Jacoby Brissett, very different quarterbacks. Drake May is someone who has a history at North Carolina. If you watched him play football in college, was not protected very well there. It was one of the sells we had for him in the draft. Big physical kid, the most physically capable of guys to withstand some of the pounding in this draft class between him, Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams. Like Drake May is the most statuesque of this group, and he also has the ability to get out of trouble with his feet and try and mitigate some of that. And so maybe there's a thought of, all right, to give our offense a chance, because we talk all the time on this show about the other guys in the locker room. There are 51 other guys in that locker room on the active roster or 52 other guys in that who have to go out there and try and make their living and try and have their success of their season dictated in large part by this one position. And so maybe the thought process is, hey, Drake, with what we've seen in practice, remember when we got to actually see him out on the field, got better as the preseason went along. Maybe they feel like because of that offensive line, he gives them a better chance to function on offense. But man, it is high risk, high reward for Gerard Mayo in year one at the helm of this organization to now say, hey, let's get started and take your lump. So I don't expect it to go well this week, Dad, by any stretch, but it's going to be how capable of Drake May of bouncing back from this physically and mentally.
Yeah, they may say this is like to provide a spark, but rarely do you put a rookie quarterback in to provide a spark. I mean, this is a season that we thought was going to be bad anyway, and now they're putting Drake. I believe this is the fourth or fifth O-line combination, too, for the Patriots. We already talked about the pressure rate they give up. A lot of that has to do with the fact that they keep changing the O-line lineup. I don't know the win here. I expected this to happen during the season at some point, but I'm not sure I expected it this early. And I don't know what to expect. I certainly don't expect the fortunes of the New England Patriots to suddenly turn. I don't expect that.
No, it isn't. It's just going to be, do we get any flashes? Because, and listen, for Drake May, I saw Mina Kimes tweeting about this yesterday, ESPN NFL analyst, how Caleb Williams struggled mightily against this Houston Texans pass rush and had some issues. And Caleb Williams has markedly more weapons in his receiver room, but the O-line situation felt somewhat as dire early in the season. And we saw the way that affected Caleb early on. And what we've seen since is, all right, a guy who's now put together a little bit of what looks like progress in the last couple of games. And so we can afford Drake May that same luxury. Unfortunately, Dad, while Jalen Polk and some of these guys early in the year flashed a little bit for New England offensively, this isn't a group that's got DJ Moore or Keenan Allen or Roma Dunze or anything resembling the weapons that Caleb gets to throw to on that side. And so it feels a lot more akin to the situation in Carolina last year that we saw break Bryce Young than it does any of the other quarterback situations we're talking about for these rookies.
Yeah, it's just, you have DeMario Douglas leading the way with 18 receptions and Hunter Henry with 16. It's just they were trying to be a running game. The score is going to stay down low, and that's not going to change. So they're going to want to try and live off their rushing attack and not the passing attack. It just seems early to be doing this for a guy they didn't feel was ready at the beginning of the season. Now 5 weeks in, that he's ready, but he's going to. As I said, I have no problem with a quarterback learning by getting their eyes watered, their nose bloodied, and that's going to happen to Drake May.
Yeah, I like Drake May a lot coming out. I had him as the second best quarterback in the class, which feels like it's aged pretty poorly considering what Jaden Daniels has done. Yeah. And so now we'll get to see if he's able to go out and do what's very difficult to do, as we've talked about more with modern quarterbacks, lift an organization beyond the sum of its parts when the parts in this case are as far from being competitive as New England's are. Want to get to this, Dad, quickly. We did get a statement now from Robert Saleh, the now former Jets head coach, who said, quote, to the Jets organization, I am grateful to have had the opportunity to work with so many incredible people. I will always be appreciative of the love and support from everyone at One Jets Drive. To all the players, I truly love and respect every single one of you. The character of the men in that locker room made coaching you guys the ultimate privilege. Through the ups and downs, each and every one of you showed up every day and attacked every moment. To my fellow coaches on the staff, it's been an honor to work with all of you. Every one of you were all in and made sacrifices for one another that will never be forgotten. I wish you all the very best of luck for the remainder of the season. And to the most passionate fan base in the NFL, thank you for embracing my family. It has always been a pleasure calling New York our home, and we will forever appreciate all the memories we created here. With love and regard, all gas, no brakes. So Robert Saleh, unsurprisingly, Dad, taking the high road here, and quite honestly, getting to address, and I'm sure there are guys he's reached out to and have reached out to him in the interim in the last 24 hours. But as we mentioned, if he wasn't escorted out by security in the ways that we all saw, he still wasn't allowed to address his team and all of the people that he did work with for the last 3 years. And so this is his very public message to them.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what we would have expected out of Robert Saleh. This statement. And he'll coach again in the NFL. He'll be a D coordinator. I don't think he'll be a head coach, but he'll be a D coordinator again or on a staff somewhere for sure, unless he wants to take some time off. But he'll definitely be on a staff again, but won't be a head coach.
Completely agree. And quite honestly, again, while Jeff Ulbrich was the one calling the plays on defense for the last few years, that was the foundation that Robert Saleh helped set. That was his specialty and the reason he was hired. He's going to be a good D coordinator that somebody gets to pull back into the ranks. Hell, listen, depending on how the rest of this year goes for Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers, and theirs defense, who's to say that there couldn't be a little reunion special going on there for a guy that was pretty successful the last time that he was in that organization. So lots to be seen there. But again, the AFC East, big-time newsmaker so far in the last couple of days. We'll see if anyone else feels like getting in on that action. As it's been an interesting time, and will be now. Drake May, the starting quarterback, as we mentioned, going into a difficult matchup coming up this weekend. Coming up next, we will finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you in the rest of the day, including a big-time first in the NHL as they get started with their season last night. right, let's finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, the third, 3 quick stories, send you into the rest of that day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. And if you miss us live at any of the locations that you can see us or any of our great guests, thank you to The Athletic's senior NFL insider Diana Rossini, as well as future Hall of Fame wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald and Yahoo Sports host Jason Fitz for all joining us today. If you missed any of their interviews, check them out wherever you get our podcast or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done. This, that, the third is brought to you by our friends at Knockaround. Knockaround Sunglasses, your go-to pair for polarized sunglasses that aren't going to break the bank for you here. My father continues to model the Shark Weeks. Jesse, ready to go skiing down the mountain as the premier villain from an 80s movie, getting ready to do some sort of dastardly deed. I have got the U.S. national team sunglasses here, little red, white, and blue support. I know we already did the Olympics this summer, but it's never too late to feel patriotic in the name of sports. You can head to knockaround.com and use code Gojo Golic to pick up your new go-to pair of polarized shades. They have got them for the NBA, NHL, MLB, NFL, all your favorite teams. All of them have great sunglasses that you can use to support them over at knockaround.com. Guys, speaking of support, let's get to this. During the Manning cast this week, Bill Belichick was on with Peyton and Eli and accused the Indianapolis Colts of piping in fake crowd noise. And so, you know, the ever online Jim Irsay wasn't going to take that lying down. He goes to Twitter and says, a reminder that piped in crowd noise myth is 1,000% fictional, and the skip was the TV broadcast. We get it, though. Visiting teams couldn't believe that 60,000 in an intimate dome stadium could make that much deafening noise. A credit to Colts fan. Hell of a spin zone there, Dad. I don't know if you buy into this or not, but this is a definite way to spin it.
Oh, whether I buy into it or not, or whether it gets proved or not, like the skip in the broadcast that he said was the TV broadcast, his spin zone was great. Put it on what a great amount of fans that we have and a great crowd of Colt fans that there are making all that noise that you wouldn't think possible. So kudos to him on the spin. Maybe, like I said, maybe someday we'll find out if it's true or not. But I like the deflection and the spin to the positive.
I mean, I would believe that people watching Joe Flacco play football would certainly be inclined to feel like they're excited about things. I mean, God, the way that Joe's been balling, I forget who was it the other day. Oh, it was Kevin Durant who tweeted out that no matter where you put Joe Flacco, he's going to hoop. Like, he has proven that so far in the last 2 seasons. Joe Flacco, who I saw Chris Long say the other day, was actually interviewing to be on Inside the NFL. He was coming over and doing one of those tryouts to potentially be on the show with Chris and Ryan Clark and Bill Belichick. And he told Chris, yeah, I think I'm going to try and play a little bit more and latch on with the team. And it seems to keep working. I wonder when someone's just going to say, hey, we'll let Joe start the season for us and see what happens with some young guy that we get a chance to wait in the wings.
Yeah, he's just someone that team's gonna hire and just kind of hang out and be that backup. You're right. I don't think he's gonna get a shot to be the starter to start a season. But boy, what a reliable backup. I mean, it is for as about as old throwback quarterback era as you can be of a statue in the pocket as Joe Flacco. But he just gets the job done.
Rich as hell, big as hell, howitzer for an arm, cool as hell in the pocket. Seems like a great vibe, too, around the building. All those guys seem to like him. We've talked to a couple guys in the Colts organization over the last couple of months about the effect he's had in the building. So good for him. Lots to cheer about there, whether it's piped in or not. Jesse, let's get to that and something to cheer about from the NHL last night.
Yeah, Jessica Campbell made history, making her regular season debut on the bench for the Kraken last night. And our friend of the program, Stormy, was there to ask her about it.
Well, this has been a lot of build-up to this moment for you, the first period in the NHL behind the bench. Under your belt now, did it feel any different, or does it just feel kind of like riding a bike?
Yeah, much like riding a bike. I think we've been at this for a while now, but definitely the emotions, the excitement, and the energy, just the start of a new year. So feeling it all.
Scoreless after one. When it comes to on-the-ice play, there were a couple nice moments, getting pressure pucks on the net. How do you get one through?
We just got to stay on it. I think we're doing the right things. I think we've got to keep putting pucks into favorable spots for ourselves and just continue to win them back. I think the mentality's there. We are driving to the net. We need more traffic in this boy's eyes, and he plays the puck well. So we got to keep it out of his hands and just stick to our game plan. It's going to come.
So first woman assistant coach on the bench for a regular season hockey game. That's cool history.
Great history there. We talk all the time. You long for the day when these moments aren't something worthy of celebration, but that's not where we're at now. First happened for a reason. They're important and deserve to be celebrated. Yep. And I love that no matter what, Dad, man, woman, whoever is behind there, we're going to talk about getting pucks towards the net come hell or high water.
Yeah, hockey talk is great talk. I mean, it's just so you just know what you're going to get. And I love that. I saw an interview with her, and she said, well, she broke the glass ceiling, and she's the first women assistant coach on the bench for a hockey game. She says, I won't be the last. And like you said, Mike, hopefully you get to the point where it's not mentioned that it's the first woman. Well, she is the first woman, but she thinks there'll be more. And what a great moment. Now, not a great moment for the Kraken. They lost the game to the Blues 3-2, but a great moment in the history for the history of the sport.
No doubt about that. Big moment of history for her. Big moment of history for the Utah Hockey Club. They get their first win last night as well. They beat the Chicago Blackhawks 5-2 and had all of their firsts in their game as well. First game, first goal. They got fights in there. A nice 5-minute major to end this one. A brief moment in time where they thought the comeback might be on from Chicago, but great goaltending performance and ultimately get the dub there. And I'm glad they kept the Utah Hockey Club, Dad. Much like the Washington football team, it's a baller name. It's clean. It feels right. We do this with all sorts of different things with the FC stuff in the world of soccer. Let this live for a little while, even though I know everyone's clamoring for the Yeti.
Yeah, I mean, I get it to not rush into a name. They had a bunch of names that they were thinking about. And I think it's fine to let it breathe, like the Washington football team and like the Utah Hockey Club. I get it. But eventually you have to get a name, right? And I think Yeti has to be.
That's a name. The Utah Hockey Club is a name.
Yeah.
It looks great and clean on merch. I would love that. The Washington Commanders pales in comparison to what the football team was.
Well, but the Utah Yeti, that merch, just much like the Kraken merch. I mean, how quickly did you and I get a Kraken shirt when that name came out? So, I mean, the Yeti, what you could do with the Yeti, I mean, it's just endless, the possibilities. Forgetting what you could put on shirts and hats. Has to be the Yeti. Has to be.
We will wait for the end game in Utah. Congratulations on their first dub as the NHL season gets going. Jesse, let's get to the third here. A little bit of mystery after someone loses their father.
So this woman posts on TikTok that she found a note in her dad's drawer after he passed away, an envelope, and it says, "Don't open until I die." So only open this after I've died. So she's like, oh God, what's in here? She opens it. It's the solution to the Cracker Barrel peg game. What's the Cracker Barrel peg game is what I want.
I knew Jesse would have. Dad, there's no way Jesse's ever been to
That's
a Cracker Barrel.
No, I haven't. I've never been.
That's true. That's true. It's a triangle wood board with a bunch of basically golf tees in the holes, and there's only one. The golf tee fills all the holes except for one, and you have to jump over the tees, and the tee you jump over, you take out, and you have to end up with just one tee on the board. So this is actually, to me, this is a great discovery. I mean, to know how to do it. I mean, because that's you bide your time till you get your food by playing the Cracker Barrel pegboard game.
Yeah, Jesse, you would everything I know about you, you would despise the Cracker Barrel experience. It would not be a place that you would want to go to, similar to a Waffle House. I just don't know if you're built for this kind of influx of talent into your ecosystem.
I don't like it.
Here's the thing, Mike. Your mother loves a Waffle House, does not like Cracker Barrel. I don't understand it.
There are very drastic differences between the two in a lot of ways that we could discuss, but this pegboard game is a big part of my entertainment anytime I've been at a Cracker Barrel. This is, by the way, the right way to have a mysterious after-death reveal. Like a lot of people, it's when they read the will and all of a sudden people get left out and there's all these hurt feelings. Like leaving a valuable bit of non-vital information like this after you go, textbook dad stuff.
Yeah, what's in your post-death envelope? That's a good question for the Twitter people.
Ooh. At Gojo and Golic, what information are you passing along in your not you, Dad, the general you.
Okay. I thought you were killing me off, Jesse.
Whoa! No, I'm just kidding.